We're in Rotherhithe, in London's borough of Southwark, to look at another fantastic relic in England. This pub behind me is named after the boat which carried some of the early pilgrims to the United States of America to help form what we know today as America. This pub, like other riverside pubs, claims to be the oldest riverside pub, like the Prospect of Whitby, which we visited in episode 1, which discussed the pirates of Wapping and what have you. But this has its own beauty. And instead of me giving you a long-winded spiel, we're just going to read the signs so you understand how important this pub is. And the original, well, let's read the signs. Instead of me telling you about it, let's read the signs. What a fantastic little shot. I love this shot here. If we look up just at this shot here, that tiny little segment there, because when we look at it from Google or from the internet, that's a great little segment. It's just a reminder of the past here. Now, one of the strange signs it's got, unattended children will be sold to the local workhouses, or workhouse, yeah, as a reminder of how industrial this area used to be.
Yeah.
And just before we look at the pub, if we look up here to the right, my right, we see some of the old industry, the old factory still in use. Come back here from the camera quickly. Just have a look at this. It's fantastic old warehousing that's been turned into apartments. One of the few things that modern builders do, which I actually love in comparison with much of the modern architecture we see today. So anyway, so let's get back on track. What's this sign? Here we go. So this restored 16th century public house, because it was supposed to have been first built, it was called the Spread Eagle in the 1550s, apparently. It was originally called Spread Eagle. It's named after the ship chartered by the Pilgrim Fathers who left Rotherhithe for America in 1620. There was a few of these trips, and they had been chartered. They'd been allowed to do so under James I, who, for those that aren't familiar with James I, he was the father of Charles I, who had his head cut off by the parliamentarians. And James I gave them the right, the ability to finally escape, but little did he realize the war that would come of it down the line. The people that were entering America in the early stages had a lot of hedges bet in the Round Hats, the parliamentarian cause, to make sure that the kingdom of Catholicism lost its influence in Europe. Just because they was on their way to America didn't mean that they wasn't invested in Catholicism losing its power in Europe. After all, the Puritans wanted to separate from Anglicanism from the Church of England, which had already rejected Catholicism. So we're going in stage after stage that these people are saying, no, we don't want that. No, we don't want that. We want something even more, shall we say, liberal, radical, because these were radicals, these individuals. I can say some similar points, I think. Built in the 17th century, the Mayflower has been the favoured inn for many illustrious adventurers, none more so than Captain Christopher Jones, who set sail in the Mayflower in 1620 to discover the, quote, New World, because that's one of the early names of America. Today, the view across the Thames from the Mayflower and our jetty provides a constant reminder of those historic days. The bar still offers a fine selection of traditional ales, and I love this here. I love this. Because years ago, there wasn't many bridges. So there was only X amount of places to cross the river. A bit like Venice today, you need a boat to cross the river. Years ago, if you didn't have a boat, you was, in a bit of bother unless you wanted to cross one of the difficult bridges to cross. Lovely old lantern. How many times I can say I love a lantern. Another interesting point about this pub is this little road here, which gives us an insight into its history as well, because it reminds us that it used to be the borough of Bermondsey. And that's another interesting point of contention, right? when these pubs say they're the oldest pubs on the riverside or the oldest pubs in London, well, London used to be made up of several cities. That's why it's got a few cathedrals, City of Westminster and so on. So it's not as clear cut as saying we've got the oldest riverside pub in London or such and such, because it's, I think obviously they're clever advertising ploy, and we're not sure. I'm not sure anyway. The prospect of Whitby would say they're the oldest riverside pub, and this pub claims to be the same. But it looks to me like this would have been accessible to the public, and that this was an actual, like over in Wapping, similar to those alleys. It says here, Metropolitan Borough of Bermondsey, right of way. So it looks like this would have once given you access to the river. But it's now private, obviously. Oh, come here for me. Have a look up there. You see the old-fashioned windows? Yeah? I don't know if the camera can get them. Come a bit further to the right. Right. And then look right up. Can you even see them? Lovely old-fashioned window. Now, the captain was actually in part ownership of this. And he's buried somewhere in the local church graveyard, which we'll go and find. So Christopher Jones made the trip back. He got all the way back. And that must have been horrific because the journey was intense. Some people say it was about 66 days, or, you know, I can't be sure. No one can really be sure. But what we can be sure of is how horrific that would have been to the people starting the New World at the time. Several people died, and there was some suspicious deaths as well. Apparently, one of the sailors died, but he was known to irritate people. Come with me. And what a beautiful view here, an insight into the old city. I don't know if the camera can really catch the rain with the sun there, but it really does help encapsulate where we are and its importance. Let's have a look at this for me, cameraman, before we move on. Over here by this church sign, I'd like you to catch the whole side of this warehouse, or what was an industrial unit. Absolutely charming. This is the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, which is where Christopher Jones is said to be buried. Now, just here, we have a plaque which attributes this. Sailing of the Mayflower. In 1620, the Mayflower sailed from Rotherhithe to the first stage of its epic voyage to America. In command was Captain Christopher Jones of Rotherhithe. So, just here, and interestingly, you can see there's a old-fashioned graveyard here. Behind it, you can see some of our history there as well in this renovated building. But there's a play park just set up in the middle of it. It's a huge contrast, isn't it? But anyway, just here, to the memory of Christopher Jones, he landed 102 planters and adventurers. They formed the Mayflower Compact. Yes, this is where he's buried here somewhere, but even the huge fans of him don't know. And considering it's one of the first names involved in the foundation of America, if you compare the American populace with the very few people involved in its foundation, you know, we should know where he is. It'd be nice if we knew where he was. On this warehouse door, we get the name of the street which the pub is on. The pub's down there, which is Rotherhithe Street. Okay, and this is the longest street in London, longer than Oxford Street and all the others, because of the way it bends. So it carries on all the way down there and bends. So yes, for those of you that want to put this to the test, this is the longest street in London, and just down there is where you'll get to the pub. Come here, cameraman. There is absolutely fantastic view. You see they've got a lovely American flag here just to highlight how important this base was. But this is where the captain was supposed to have moored the Mayflower because he part-owned this. He could moor the boat here to save on taxes. I mean, to Americans, if you was to come to England, this will probably be one of your go-tos. If you was in London and you're looking for somewhere which is relevant to you as an American, this would certainly be the place. Now, be careful, cameraman, because if you look down, you don't want to be dropping your phone or your cigarette here. Not at all. Just have a look down the river at this fantastic view. Now, across the river there, you can actually see a lot of the old-fashioned style. Look this way. The old-fashioned factories which have been converted into flats, which is fantastic. This view has not been tainted. Apart from, if you look up there, you can see the city. See the city up there. Your view, ladies and gents. I can't have a seat because I'll get a wet ass. So, sorry, Americans, I've got a wet ass. Get a wet ass, guys. Would you prefer it if I did the whole documentary like this? That'd be better. Look at that. And we are directly over the river from where all the pirate communities would have been. They'd have been on this side as well, but the pirates at the time would have been very active and scared of this location because this is where revenue and customs would execute them. So there's the Prospect of Whitby. You won't be able to see it. You won't be able to see it from here, but right over there, which I'm pointing at now, that's the Prospect of Whitby, which was episode 1. Oh, hang on, I think my finger's in the right there. That little white dot I'm looking at. So there, all across there, that was where pirates would be punished, executed, and Her Majesty's, or His Majesty's, the revenue and customs at the time would be taking you to account for your actions for maritime criminality. So you'd be executed over there. And if you want to see that in detail, just watch episode 1. I love this. You can see where that would have had an old-fashioned wooden balcony and it fade away. And here is there to the right. Here's the other side of that alley, which would have probably led down. If you face the camera down now, this might have been a set of stairs, so down the bottom. Yeah? So that was probably public at one point. This is Cumberland Wharf, and this is said to be the exact location where the Mayflower set out from. If you come here for me, you'll see that this statue was erected by the Mayflower, it was by Elise Marks, the Vice Chair of Mayflower Tenants Association. And over here it tells us a little bit of the story. But, you know, I find historians tend to leave out a lot of the best bits. And we get these sweeping terms which sort of, we're expected to believe that all of these things just sort of happened, as if, oh, people were getting oppressed, therefore it's best that they move on. Documentarians will say the Puritans were oppressors and they were oppressed, but rarely will they talk about the fact that these people wanted to leave society and start a new society because of the radical elements within them that felt that, I mean, right now, London is packed. It's got so many people living on top of each other, and they're not looking to leave. The excuses that historians give is that this place was oppressing them, that it was impure, that the Puritan name described them truly, that they was looking for a better life, that the degeneracy, etc., is what drove them abroad. Well, I find that ridiculous when the degeneracy of today outdoes anything, especially with the high population, social media, specific industries, completely. The past pales in insignificance to the degeneracy, the public degeneracy of today. So I don't believe in their pure reasons to leave England. Now, before they went to the States, they first went to Holland and stayed there for a few years. But one of the excuses that's given for them leaving Holland is that they felt their children were becoming too foreign because they still identified as English, apparently, despite wanting to leave England. So they didn't want their children becoming too much like children from the Netherlands. So back they come and the voyage begins. So just come here for me, and we see here, it says, Cumberland Wharf is the approximate site from which the Mayflower set sail for America. The Pilgrims, who were persecuted in England, hoped for freedom to practice their faith in the New World. Now, back then, there was a lot more room than there is now, and we're led to believe that these people were so persecuted that they needed more room. When today, like I said, people are living on top of each other. After docking in Southampton to pick up supplies, they finally sailed from Plymouth on the 6th of September 1620. The ship arrived in America at harsh times, and what they're relaying here is apparently on the other end, some of the pilgrims that were already there, or the people waiting there, felt that these might be particularly radical people because they had taken the voyage in a dangerous time of the year to do so. So some people would say that they were welcomed in, but in reality, the chances are anyone seeing a ship coming over the horizon at that time of year would have thought these people are on the run. They've got someone on their heels at least. Here we have a nice little image of the Puritans working alongside the natives of the time, which is where we get Thanksgiving from, because during the early stages, the Pilgrims struggled with their crops and what have you, and the people of the land actually came after a couple of bad crops and taught the locals how to grow their food, thus ultimately saving them. So whether you're a local Londoner or a Londoner, or you are from abroad, especially from America, if you're seeking somewhere to see historical relevance to us and to yourself as an American, I can't suggest enough Rotherhithe, and especially visiting the Mayflower. This entire area is relevant to you, it's relevant to me, it's relevant to the Western world. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you soon.